Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Maple Media. Today, we will be interviewing the Conservative Party's Jacqueline Turner. I will now turn the mic to her to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jacqueline Turner, the new leader of the Conservative Party. I'm very excited to be here and running in the Mississauga Lakeshore riding.
Alrighty, so I have a couple questions for you today. So we would like your utmost honesty, as our policy is honesty. And so my first question for you is: can you share some key experiences that have shaped your leadership style and political vision?
Sure. So, just going off that, transparency is extremely important to the Conservative Party. We are dedicated to being transparent. And as for leadership, I think leadership is something that is personal. For myself, I feel that I am a very strong leader. Some of my past experiences in university, I was the captain of my varsity track and field team. So I understand the importance of being a strong leader, but also listening to my team. I have a great team behind me at the Conservative Party. We work together almost flawlessly. And I think that's an important thing to point out. But also, leadership has to do with being involved in the community. I think being involved in the community is so important because um, being a leader just isn't about yourself. It's really about the community, and I'm here to serve our community. And yeah, that's the most important thing to me about being a leader.
Alrighty. And then my next question to you is: what motivated you to run specifically for the Mississauga Lakeshore riding?
Sure. So the Mississauga Lakeshore riding has historically been a liberal riding, and there's been countless by-elections happening. So we really felt that the Mississauga Lakeshore riding was due for change, with things like rising crime rates, high cost of living. We thought that a leadership change was important to give the community what they deserve.
Alrighty. All right, moving on, let's talk about taxes. So, the Conservative Party is known for advocating lower taxes. How do you plan to implement tax reduction while ensuring public services remain adequately funded?
Yeah, that is an issue that is really at top of mind for a lot of Canadians. So, first and foremost, we plan to cut the carbon tax. The reason for this is because the carbon tax disproportionately affects lower income Canadians. So, by reducing the price at the pump, we can reduce that burden that a lot of Canadians are feeling. The other areas that we want to invest in and make some cuts are in kind of the areas that seem redundant in administrative policies and procedures. We have a lot of bureaucratic issues that need to be addressed, and by cutting our own governmental costs, we can put money back into Canadians' pockets.
Alrighty. So, my next question for you is: what specific tax policies do you believe would benefit families and small businesses in the Mississauga Lakeshore area?
For families specifically, we want to recognize the programs that are in place that we feel are working. So, daycare programs that are in place right now, will continue those. However, we want to ensure that families are supported, and increasing funding in areas like childcare will be important. For small businesses, we want to provide incentives and subsidies and tax breaks for startup small businesses, just to get their kind of feet um, off the ground, get them running, ready to go, because that can be a big barrier for small business owners.
My next question to you is one of importance to many Canadians. With the rising cost of living, what strategies do you propose to support the working class without compromising economic growth?
We will be coming out with a housing policy, ways that our government can support housing, and ways that landlords will no longer be able to take advantage of Canadians. That will be our main focus, as well as cutting the carbon tax, finding different ways that we can make cuts through in our government, that also support Canadians, so we can help support provincial governments in areas like healthcare and education.
Adding on to that, increased wait times has been a topic of discussion across the country. So, what initiatives would you propose to improve healthcare access and mental health resources in the region?
Healthcare and mental health access have been increasing issues that have been facing Canadians for years. If elected, our government would strive to support provincial governments by hiring more healthcare professionals, investing in local clinics where we can, and a lot of that will come from funding from the federal government that can go to our provincial governments. So, for things like hiring more healthcare professionals, that should address a lot of those wait time issues, as well as smaller local clinics. That will be especially important because a lot of the time Canadians have to go to the hospital when in reality, if there was a local clinic, like an urgent care, they would be able to access those services. A lot of the time, our healthcare system gets clogged up by things that could be addressed at an urgent care. So, making investments in areas like this would really help with wait times and people's access to mental health services as well.
Alrighty, so moving on to a different kind of question. So I know immigration is something that a lot of Canadians are worried about as we have a lot of newcomers coming in, but the newcomers are also worried about how do they fit into this society and how can they establish a better world for themselves. So my question to you is, how do you plan on supporting the newcomers and immigrants in the Mississauga Lakeshore area, given the area's diverse population?
Mississauga Lakeshore has a very rich cultural diversity, and it's one of their biggest strengths. As for newcomers, we want to support anyone who is coming into Canada, especially newcomers who have very specific skill sets. One of our initiatives will be to recognize foreign credentials so that we can help newcomers get their feet into our Canadian economy and different sectors like healthcare and education, as well as being small business owners, which will in turn help them and also help the Canadian economy. As we talked about earlier with healthcare and hiring more healthcare professionals, that's something that we want to support our provincial governments in is recognizing those foreign credentials so that we can increase our doctors and nurses. Of course, this is not only up to the federal government, so we would like to work with our provincial governments, see where we can help them make things happen.
All right. So I want to jump to a different ship here. So my next question is about environment policies. So a lot of Canadians, we've had the case with the Ontario Court of Appeals where they brought environmental issues to the court. So given the history, the Conservative Party has faced criticism for its environmental policies. How do you plan to address climate change while still supporting economic growth?
As we mentioned earlier, the carbon tax will be cut. That is our first thing on our agenda. We understand that investments in areas in clean energy are important. So things like solar, wind, those are important, but we also want to start getting more funding and support for more innovative areas such as nuclear energy. Those areas for us seem advantageous because we want to broaden where we can make more climate change efforts. So not only do we want to cut the carbon tax and continue to invest in clean energy, we want to expand that. Our party is really interested in focusing on innovation because that is looking forward for our future and for the youth of Canada. If we can find different ways to combat climate change that also makes sense for our economy, that will only help us in the future. And we think that nuclear energy could be the answer to that.
All right, so if elected as the MP for Mississauga Lakeshore, what are the top three priorities you aim to address?
So, first and foremost, we'd like to address affordability. So, cutting things like the carbon tax and reducing our own government's spending issues will help address affordability for Canadians. Secondly, we are going to improve safety in communities. That has been a very big concern in many different municipalities across Ontario and the rest of the country. So, we'd like to address that in the coming years in Mississauga Lakeshore. Lastly, the housing crisis has been a huge topic. And it's very much up for debate, the different ways that different parties would want to address that. For the Conservative Party, we would like to introduce our direct housing action plan, and there will be more to come on the details of that in the next few days.
Alrighty. So, how do you plan to engage with local residents and ensure that their voices are heard in Parliament?
Hearing the voices of residents is the utmost importance. We are here to work for the citizens of Canada and of Mississauga Lakeshore. So we plan on doing very often local town hall meetings. This way, residents can make their voices heard. I can hear it directly from them, but this is also a way to hold me accountable. Residents can tell me what they're happy with, what they're not, and if I've promised to do something and I haven't, would definitely be a way to hold me accountable and other government officials. So that is really something that we're looking forward to. And transparency is one of our key values. So those town hall meetings will be extremely important.
All right, my last question for you is what personal values do you believe most align with your vision for Mississauga Lakeshore?
I strongly value community, accountability, and resilience. So for community, that is at the heart of everything that I do. And I want to be a voice for Mississauga Lakeshore and someone that they can trust. Mississauga Lakeshore has proven to be a resilient community. With many newcomers who start small businesses, it's proven that Mississauga Lakeshore residents are hard workers, as well as residents who have been there for years and years. And for accountability, I want to prove to Mississauga Lakeshore that I am someone that they can trust, who they can hold accountable. I'm committed to making safer communities and taking real action on things that matter, like the housing crisis and affordability for Canadians.
We appreciate you coming down to Maple Media and we thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me. This was a great experience, and I'm looking forward to sharing with Canadians what other policies we have planned.
This was Gurleen Kang with Maple Media, and we have more content to come. Be sure to check out our other interviews and the behind the scenes leading up to Monday's debate. Check out our socials in the description.